Welcome to the Brand New You podcast. On today's show, we're going to answer the question that's on everybody's mind. What is personal branding? Are you ready? Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Brand New You Show, the podcast dedicated to helping you understand how personal branding and social media, when used correctly, can help you discover and create a brand new you. Every week, we'll meet here to learn and share best practices and the latest trends in personal branding and social media through a combination of solo shows and interviews with recruiters, career coaches, personal branding, and social media experts. My name is Ryan, and I am your host and your guide on this journey to discover a brand new you. Now, in our last show, I gave you my definition of personal branding, which is what people feel, think, and say about you when you're not around. But how do you get people to feel, think, and speak about you in a way that you want them to? Well, that's what we're going to cover on today's show as we take a deep dive into understanding what personal branding really is all about. So let's get started. Now, you may have noticed that I emphasized the word brand in the title of the show. I do this because the title actually has dual meanings. The first meaning is related to the desired outcome that I want for you as a result of listening to this show, which is to create a brand new you. Not someone different than who you are already, but instead, I want you to become more of who you are, not some version of other people's definitions of who they think you should be. Many of you, through no fault of your own, mistakenly identify yourself with your job, and maybe even your title. But you are more than some fictitious title. Somewhere buried deep down inside, in places we don't talk about at parties, is the real you waiting to be discovered. I want to help you find that person through the tools and tips we will talk about on this show. The second meaning directly relates to, and you guessed it, personal branding. Unfortunately, there are a lot of misconceptions that surround the topic of personal branding, and I'm going to attempt to clarify some of those misconceptions on today's show. So let's get started. Some people believe that personal branding is just a logo. Others believe it's a marketing scheme. And I've even heard people say that it's a fad. Well, I can tell you for a fact that it's not a fad. Personal branding has actually been around for a very long time, since 1937, in fact. You see, personal branding was first discussed in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, first published in 1937. Now, the book itself is largely about your mindset and how your limiting beliefs are holding you back. Mr. Hill compares and contrasts the mindsets of rich people and the not-so-rich people in order to draw his conclusions. It's in his analysis of these case studies where I believe the seeds for personal branding are planted. Mr. Hill discusses many of the tenets of modern-day personal branding throughout his book. Now, I won't go into details, but if you haven't read the book, I highly recommend you check it out. Some of you may believe that personal branding was started by Tom Peters, the well-known management guru, when he released his article in Fast Company magazine all the way back in 1998 titled, The Brand Called You. In the article, Mr. Peters discusses the importance of treating yourself as a brand in order to advance in your pursuits and in your career. While published a little bit later than Mr. Hill's book, this article is largely credited with starting the modern-day movement, if you will, called personal branding. So I ask, can personal branding be a fad when it's been around for over 75 years? Now, with the publication of Mr. Peters' article came a lot of good discussions around thinking about yourself as the CEO of the company for Me Incorporated. Unfortunately, these discussions quickly become murky and muddled as people often try to jump right in and implement the strategies discussed in the article. Sadly, they miss the point. Personal branding needs to always start with an internal assessment to discover who you are, where you fit, both professionally and personally. Sadly, they missed the point. Personal branding needs to always start with an internal assessment to discover who you are and where you fit, both personally and professionally. Without this understanding, it's very difficult to create a brand new you. Having said that, I understand why people skip right to the end game. It's human nature, really. We want to get somewhere, and we discover some new tools. We pick out what we like, and usually what is easiest to implement, and we move forward. And as I already mentioned, the problem with this approach is that we skip some of the most important steps along the way. You see, I believe that personal branding is really a 3-step process. Those steps are perceive, believe, and achieve. Everyone always wants to skip right to achieve, but if you don't do the first 2 steps, your results will be murky and muddled. Perceive, to become aware or conscious of something, to come to realize or understand. In order to start the personal branding process, you must first become aware of and realize that you have a brand. So let's walk through a few examples. Picture yourself in a meeting with your coworkers, and all of a sudden, a senior leader walks in. How do you feel? What's the temperature of the room, so to speak, after this person has walked in? Next, I want you to visualize yourself in yet another meeting. This time, you are there because you were volunteered to participate on a project, and in walks the project manager. It happens to be someone that you do not hold in high regard. How does this person make you feel? In this last scenario, I want you to picture yourself in the exact same meeting room with the same people, all of your coworkers in it, and then you walk in. How do those people feel about you? What adjectives would they use to describe you? It might be a little bit difficult to think about that right now. Will their perception of you be the same as your perception of yourself? If not, why not? You see, we all have perceptions about ourselves and about other people. These perceptions are based on various character traits that we display consciously or unconsciously. Character traits can be good or bad, and they are usually related to some underlying values or beliefs that we hold. We perceive these traits in others by watching and observing their behaviors, attitudes, and how they interact with the world around them. Examples of traits include honesty, loyalty, kindness, loudness, rude, mean, greedy, optimistic, pessimistic, conceited, or playful. There are literally countless numbers of character traits that people display on a daily basis, and it's those observed traits that help us form perceptions about others. But what we never ask ourselves as individuals is what traits do we display daily and what perceptions do others hold of us? Now, what about our interactions online? Well, frankly, the same rules apply. Things that you post, tweet about, like, or friend all play into the perception of what others think about you. Even something as simple as a picture about what you did last weekend can speak volumes about you to someone you've never met. Consider this. What perception would you have of someone who posted pictures of themselves at a drinking party? If they did that once, you might be able to shrug it off and say, just a fun weekend. But what if they did it on multiple occasions? Would your feelings or perceptions begin to change? Now this time, think about yourself reviewing pictures of someone who attended an industry conference over the weekend. This person tweeted, posted, liked, learnings from the conference, quotes from the speakers. In all of their selfies, they're dressed in casual attire, maybe a sports coat if it's a guy. This is someone you've never met, but you're forming a perception about this person from the pictures you found on the internet. And I'm also willing to bet that you probably started to form a perception of both of these fictitious people as I was talking. Now for fun, I want you to pretend that you're a recruiter. And remember from our first show that 93% of recruiters now review your online profile before calling. Both of these two people that I've just described have applied for a job within your company. Who are you going to call first? This is the reality of the internet today. If you're not paying attention to what you post online, Google will. And if you think having nothing show up in your search results is a good thing, you need to think again. Nothing showing up indicates that you are not keeping up with the latest trends. The perception in this case can be that you are lazy and unwilling to learn new things. This is why in the last show I asked you to Google yourself. Are you starting to perceive? Now imagine the perception you could create if you were able to align your online self with your real-world personality. This is why I say that personal branding starts with perceive. It really is about our feelings towards others based on our observations of them. It's how others whom we've never met form perceptions and feelings about us. So personal branding is really about how people feel about us, which translates into what they say about us when we're not around. Do you know how others feel and think about you? It's an important question and not an easy one to answer. And until you know this, achieving goals may be impossible. If I've done my job correctly, at this point you're starting to, or hopefully you've become aware that you do have a brand and that brand is speaking volumes about you every day. If you can perceive this, then we are ready to move to the next step in the process. Believe. To accept as true. Feel sure of the truth. To think or suppose. Now, a lot of people want to believe that personal branding is a logo. This misconception is backed up by the dictionary that refers to branding as an identifying mark or an image. Well, let me say this one time so as not to be misunderstood. Personal branding is not a logo. You can't go pay someone on 48hourslogo.com to develop a logo for you, and all of a sudden, bam, you now have a personal brand. It just doesn't work that way. People think this way because a logo can call to mind your feelings about a particular brand. When you see that logo, you are reminded of your personal experiences and your observations with the brand. Now, it takes multiple interactions to form those feelings and those perceptions. But at some point, you will begin to associate a logo with those feelings. And when that happens, the logo will now elicit those feelings whenever you see it. Think about this for a minute. What are the first things that come to your mind when you hear these words? Microsoft, Apple, Starbucks. If you're a Starbucks fan, I'm guessing you could probably smell your favorite coffee just at the mention of the word. If you're not a fan of any three of these that I mentioned, then I also think you probably had a similar but opposite response, right? Fan or not, these feelings are ones that you've developed over time and that you believe them to be true. You also have certain beliefs about yourself, both personally and professionally. Do others hold those same beliefs? If not, there's a misalignment between your beliefs and those of others that may be holding you back, that may be limiting your opportunities and your career. Let me ask you a few personal questions. Do you feel stuck in your current position? Do you see others get promoted, but not you? Do you feel you are qualified, but you can't understand why other people don't see it? If you ask yourself these questions, then there is most likely a misalignment between what you believe and what others perceive. In order for you to get past this, to be able to move forward, you need to know what others perceive, because what they perceive is also what they believe. And this is the heart of personal branding. This is the hardest part to get resolution to. This is the most difficult part to understand. That's why you can't just skip ahead to achieve, because to be able to achieve, you must first believe. Believe that you have a brand and understand what others believe that brand to be. So how do we get past this? The answer is so simple that it will seem understated and maybe even a little bit crazy, but it's key to understanding your brand today. You need to ask, but you don't just need to ask anyone. You need to ask people whose opinions matter the most to you. Make a list of these people, 10 to 15 of them if you can get there, and go out and ask them how they perceive you. Ask them what they think about you. Ask them about how you make them feel. Now, you can do this in a couple of ways. First, you could just ask them directly. I personally don't recommend this approach, but it is an approach you can take. Because asking a person directly can put pressure on some people, and they may tell you what they think you want to hear versus what you actually need to hear. And this is not going to help you. However, it's also possible that some people you talk to might actually be perfectly okay with telling you right to your face. And in these cases, the question becomes, are you willing to accept what they say when they're right in front of you? Now, the second way is to send an email directly to these people. Most people will be more receptive to answering an email than a face-to-face conversation. Personally, I sent emails. And in my emails, I asked 2 questions. The first question was, what are the top 5 words or phrases that come to your mind that best describe what I am known for? And the second question was, what are the top 5 skills and traits that you think about when you hear my name mentioned? Now, you may be saying to yourself, no one is going to answer those questions. but I can tell you that I had my first response back within a half an hour. I sent my email to 15 people, and I heard back from a total of 10 of them. And that's a 67% return rate. Not bad for something so personal to ask of others. I'll have a template of the email I sent out in the show notes at ryanroten.com/BNY2. Now, the responses I received both confirmed some of my beliefs and surprised me as well. And I did find some misalignments between my beliefs and those of others. And as I reflected on their comments and my interactions with them, I could easily see how their beliefs were formed in areas where we were misaligned. They had created a perception of me based on experiences and interactions with me. This led them to develop a belief and an associated brand of who I am and how I add value in any given situation. And guess what? Those pesky misalignments between my thinking and theirs turned out to be areas of development that were holding me back, that were limiting my options. Now, it took me a while to come to this reality, that my own self-limiting beliefs were keeping me from where I wanted to go. Understanding this came with the realization that I had a brand in other people's eyes and that my brand needed to be tweaked if I wanted to achieve my goals, both professionally and personally. Achieve. To reach or attain a desired objective, level, or result by effort, skill, or courage to accomplish or bring about. What do you want to be in the next 5 years? Is that too long? Okay, how about the next 3 years? Or maybe even next year? I mentioned earlier that most people want to jump directly to this step. They make some goals, they start down a path, only to discover later that the path that they have chosen is the wrong one for them. So they quit. They go back to their life of mediocrity, and they say that personal branding is a marketing scheme and a fad. Well, the reason they quit is because somewhere along the way, they hit one of those misalignments we identified in the believe step. You can't answer where you want to be in 5 years, 3 years, or even next year without first understanding where you are today. Once you know how others perceive you, you can begin to actively manage those traits that they believe you display. Maybe you exhibit a bad trait. Just by the simple act of knowing that others perceive it as bad can make you change your behavior. And the key to achieving is to align your behavior with your goals. And you can tweet that if you like. Right in the definition of achieve are the words effort and courage. And you're going to need both as you begin to build your brand. But this can only come from conscientious and deliberate actions on your part. Some of those actions will include aligning your offline self with your online profile to develop a more comprehensive brand of you. The goals you want to achieve in life are right in front of you. As you strive to achieve them, you must seek to understand how you are perceived by others. Only then can you put in the effort required on the right tasks and align your behaviors to achieve your goals. Professional golfer Tiger Woods once said, "The harder I work, the luckier I get." What he didn't say was that he was working on very clearly defined goals that were all aligned with his personal brand. So my challenge to you is to go out and be lucky. Find out how others perceive you. Send emails to your trusted advisors. Ask them the questions I ask mine. And I think you'll be surprised by the results. Now, as a podcast listener, you know that one of the best ways you can help this show grow and continue to serve others is to stop by iTunes and leave a 5-star rating and review for the show. If you do, not only will I be humbled and grateful, but I will certainly mention you on the show. So what are your thoughts today on personal branding? If you'd like to share your opinion, send an email to rlroten@gmail.com. Use the subject line personal branding and let me know what you think. Or you can head on over to ryanroten.com/podcast. Right there in the middle of the page is a SpeakPipe button. Click it and you can record a voice message and send it directly to my inbox. And again, as usual, if you do, I just might share it on the next show. So until next time, perceive that you have a brand, believe that others see it, and use your brand to achieve your goals. I've been Ryan Roten. Hey, thanks for sticking around. I've got 2 Easter eggs to share with you today. First, I want to give a shout out to Mark Mason from the Late Night Internet Marketing Podcast. Mark works a full-time job and does internet marketing in the margins of his life. Mark, if you're listening, I just wanted to say thank you. Your challenge to me at the Podcast Movement Conference was exactly what I needed to get myself moving and push away a lot of the self-imposed roadblocks that I had placed in front of myself to getting this podcast off the ground. Next up, I have a special offer for you today. Earlier in the show, I made a movie reference. So for the first 2 people who leave an honest 5-star review and rating for the show on iTunes and send me an email correctly identifying the name of the movie that I referenced, I will send you a copy of John Acuff's book, Quitter. Just remember, though, in order to qualify, you need to complete both actions. This is only for the fast action takers, as I only have 2 extra copies of the books available. So if you believe that you're an action taker, this is your chance to prove it. So good luck, and until next time, I've been Ryan, and I'm out.